Omar, thanks so much for joining us.
Absolutely. Thanks for having
Hello.
me. Hello.
Hello. Maybe let's kick it back to the beginning. Who are you? How'd you get into tech? Yeah, what was your journey to get here a little bit?
Yeah. Um, at the highest level, the way that I describe myself is I'm a person, and my hardware is Lebanese, my software is American. It's almost like an engineer's way of describing what it means to be Lebanese American. I was born in the U.S. Both my parents are Lebanese, and I'm Lebanese American. And for as far as I can remember, I just enjoyed building things. Some of my earliest memories were in the basement in the house in Michigan where I grew up for the first couple of years of my life just playing Legos nonstop, going down, like going in the basement in the morning and just building, buildings or cars or things of that sort. And that's I really learned to enjoy doing that from an early age, and kind of everything that I've did afterwards and also like now in my career I kind of see it as an extension of doing that just because it's the ability to take things and create things for others. Um, so yeah, I guess at a very high level, I really enjoy building things for myself and others, and yeah, it kind of has a lot to do with what we're doing right now with Center, my current company, which is building things for people who build.
Very cool.
Hmm.
And we'll get into center in a bit. One thing, when researching about you, and we've gotten a chance to know each other at least a little bit over the past couple of years. You've written, I think, 100 posts I saw on your blog. Maybe talk a little bit. So you're a builder on one end, but on the other end of the spectrum, you're a writer, and maybe those are connected. But why do you write? What was the impetus for that?
Yeah, I have a couple of different answers. One of them was I started doing it. I started keeping a blog in I think 2003, and the reason isn't all that profound. I actually had a crush on this girl, and I couldn't figure out how to impress her. And I decided
Love
maybe
it.
if I built a website, I could get her attention. So I got the domain name omarbohsali.com, and I learned HTML and CSS, and I took it pretty far, and it
Did it work?
I
I just need to know.
Yeah, absolutely.
It must have worked.
And she's
yeah,
now
Now
your
no,
she's your
wife.
wife. Same
no, no,
page.
no, 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 no. It was really good. Yeah, we ended up dating for a little bit, and this is like eighth or ninth grade, I think. So as serious as a relationship can get in ninth grade, but that was when I got really serious about building web apps and websites and web apps and whatnot. But to kind of go back to why I write, for me, I think that's the way that I can think in the most clear way.
Mhm.
Whenever I think about something in my head, there are like a thousand different directions that the thought can go in. But when you write something down, it has to be linear, it has to be sequential, and it has to be logical. And I find that if you can explain something well to others, you probably understand it yourself. And with a lot of the things that I write about, there, ideas that have formed in my mind that I want to kind of like document and crystallize and keep track of. So I really do it for myself, and I think it's awesome that it's something that is easy to share with others. Um, I also like to write because it's kind of an indulgent activity, and what I mean by that is I've actually rewritten the CMS, the content management system for my personal website, probably 6 times now. Every couple of years, whenever I just feel like doing something new and I kind of want to scratch the itch of a side project, that's like a default go-to side project. Right now, it's actually built on top of Notion, so I can just add a new post in a Notion database, and it'll automatically show up. So that's a lot of fun. Um, and then the other reason why I like to write is because it feels like everything that I don't know. It like I've had this feeling that like anything that I achieve or gain or win or whatnot will eventually go away. But what's nice about writing on the internet is that it'll probably be archived somewhere. It'll probably be up for a while, and it's something that actually will last. It can't get taxed. It can't get taken away. It can't get stolen. I can just write something and it's just there. And there's something really nice about the finality of that. It's like I write and then it's done, as opposed to so many other things where it's like we do things for the future. With writing, you can do things for right now.
Interesting. Lyra and I have talked about that exact fact, but in a more negative way, which is people write ridiculous things, and it's permanently on the internet to then ruin their future careers and lives. But I appreciate that you're doing
Yeah.
it for a much more noble reason and a much more thoughtful purpose than that.
Totally,
But it's very
totally,
true.
totally. Well, what's interesting too with writing is like I do think that there should be a way for writers to, or for anybody to share ideas in a way that like doesn't take on that much reputational risk. Like if you think about it, like people have many ideas, and like there's a good chance that a lot of them might be unpopular at some point in the future. Like anything that
Yes,
you write is almost certainly going to piss someone off at some point in the future. So it would be nice if there was some way to just like think out loud, share your ideas, and kind of convey that like, you know, something is a thought that you're having, but it's not necessarily something that you definitely believe in. Yeah, maybe people would be a little bit more open to exploring if that were the case.
totally. Makes a lot of
You
sense.
know, kind of in that vein, your writing's also, across the spectrum in terms of its topics of the four-handed clock, writing better code, SQL queries for the New York Times crossword. Like, one, do you have a favorite post, and two, is it just kind of like a zap of inspiration, and you just decide to write on that topic, or like what goes into each post as well?
Yeah. For a lot of the posts, the end goal is to bookend an idea that I have. So for
Mm-hmm.
that, for the one, for example, the solving the New York Times crossword puzzle in SQL, that was an idea that I had when I was doing Recurse Center in 2017, and I wanted to turn it into a project, but
Mm-hmm.
it was pretty clear that like there wasn't a way to monetize it or that nobody else would really get it, but I still wanted to have like an end deliverable. So I almost thought of, okay, let me make my goal to write a blog post about doing this kind of thing. So that was, yeah, that was sort of how the post for that came to fruition. And then for my favorite post, I I think it's probably the one about how computers are deterministic. I forgot the title. I think it's like how to write better code. I was thinking about making it like a BuzzFeed style. It's like the 7 things you need to do to become a better coder. Like one of them will surprise you. But like jokes aside, it's the thought that computers are totally deterministic and
Mm-hmm.
computers do exactly what we tell them to do. And it took me a really long time to internalize that thought, just because I've spent days and weeks and months on end trying to track down, you know, things that I thought were bugs or problems with the computer. But when I changed my thinking and I realized, oh, the computer's always doing exactly what I tell it to do, the difference is that sometimes I don't realize what I'm telling it to do.
Right.
By far, that was I think that was the biggest unlock for me as an engineer, because I realized if there's anything that I don't understand, it's my choice whether or not I want to understand it, because most
Mm-hmm.
software is open source, most software is there, and it kind of took it from this feeling of you know, the computer being this mystery black box to the computer being something totally deterministic, and whether or not I could understand it was my choice.
Mm-hmm.
And ever since I started approaching it that way, it felt like things became a lot easier.
Yeah.
I love that. I actually there's a concept called like locus of control. Are you familiar with that as well?
Yeah,
I
definitely.
only yeah recently I think in the past couple of years I've learned more about it, but I actually feel like there's a high correlation of founders and people who have a strong internal locus of control, meaning like
Mm-hmm.
they feel like they actually have control over their destiny. Like I can't imagine being in a job as tumultuous as being a founder or standing up for something that most people don't believe in and feeling like the whole world is against you and you don't have control. So anyway, that resonates a lot when you kind of talk about that.
Mm. Yeah, the it yeah, I have so many thoughts on that. I think like Seneca might have been the one of the original believers there. It's like he says there are two types of problems you can solve and problems that will kill you. Or it was something like that. Maybe it wasn't so extreme or so severe, but yeah, it is a really powerful thought to have. And I feel like when you figure out like I don't know, like from being a startup founder, it's just like when you set out, you know, to achieve a goal and you realize like there are some things you can control and some things you can't control, it it leads to these interesting outcomes and these interesting results. Like for a while when I was figuring out what to work on, I wanted to like have the spark of inspiration. All of a sudden I wanted to just like instantly figure out what I should work on, but that wasn't something that was in my control. But what was in my control was how many, new projects have I launched, how much have I done. And
Yeah.
paradoxically, I would actually just measure like the lines of code that I would write every week. And my thinking was,
Mm,
if I figure out what I if I look back and like have figured out what I'm going to do, it's probably because I've tried a lot of things.
yeah.
Therefore, maybe I should just try and like write a lot of code and make a lot of things. So it leads to these interesting intermediate things where some people would look and they would say, how silly, why are you measuring that? That's not what actually matters. But
Hmm.
like, when you realize what you can control and what you cannot control, um it's cool, because like, at least for me, that's when I started giving myself permission to decide what my metrics were and what I wanted to measure and what I thought mattered. And yeah, I think it's a good way to live one's life.
A version of that. I remember when I think I was 23, the VP of the group that I had joined. I think I was like complaining about something or whatever, just being, an insolent, 23-year-old basically. And he told me, Lior, and he was Cajun as well. He's like, Lior, when you point a finger at someone, there's three fingers pointing back at you. And I don't know, that always stuck with me. And that's maybe looking at it from a locus of control. So from the perspective of, just focus on yourself and what you can do and not blame others. So it's like a version of that as well, as opposed to just doing it yourself. But anyway, that was one of those lessons that I got when I was early on in my career, that I was like, you know what, like, you're right. Like, yes, that thing that was not in my control did not go as well as it could have. But at the end of the day, I could have done many other things in order to ensure that it did, and I failed in that way. And as long as you don't, give yourself too hard of a time for that, I think it can be a really powerful mindset.
Yeah, I totally agree, and that's a cool one. It took me a second to realize why the three fingers are pointing back, but yeah,
Yeah.
that's like it's
Same. I
Not
was like,
it's
great.
hmm.
Yeah, exactly. It
it's
takes a second, but once you get it, it sticks with you. Scott Childress, you
it's
crush
kind
it.
of like it's like the right hand rule in physics, where it's just like, it's like remembering
Or
which,
like bread or drink when you're at a anyway.
there you
Yeah.
go. No, but it's like yeah, it's like that saying. It's like wherever you go, there you are. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's just the realization that like a lot of the things that we encounter in our day to day lives are actually things that have happened to us in the past, or just stories that we bring along with us, and they just
Yeah.
like we manifest them in different ways. And it's so interesting, just like seeing how these things keep reappearing, and just, I don't know, yeah, like looking at it with curiosity. But yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah. So from the post, you actually have created 30 side projects as well. Maybe talk about, like, is it a post that turns into a side project? Like, what happens? Like, how long do you decide to dedicate to each side project? Like, maybe talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah. At the highest level, quantity leads to quality.
Hmm.
Unless you know exactly what you need to do and you have, perfect clarity, and you have the vision. But um, I never really like have the ultimate vision. I just try a lot of things and see what sticks. Um, and yeah, I think it's kind of like I mentioned before. If like whenever I think about myself in the future, like, oh, I imagine that I've built something that's very, very successful. I've probably tried a lot of things to get there. So the goal almost becomes to try a lot of things and see what
Hmm.
sticks, and the goal
Hmm.
just becomes to be prolific in some way. um as for like, side projects versus companies, it's
Hmm.
an interesting distinction, because like, yeah, like in the code base for my personal site, I do have different categories for like
Hmm.
projects versus like jobs versus companies versus investments. But it's kind of interesting, because these days like the lines kind of blur in a lot of
Hmm.
ways.
Totally.
Something that, starts off as a side project that has product market fit instantly could be more economically productive than a company that like I choose to spend, years of my life working on. Um, or whenever I look back at, like different angel investments that I've made, like some of the most successful, like highest returns that I've generated have come from Twitter DMs, or have come from, things that I was involved in a little bit in the past. So I'm still thinking about like, what is a side project versus what is a project versus what is a company and whatnot. But yeah, sometimes by trying to create structure for things, you discover interesting patterns in them. um I wish I had a better answer than that. But yeah, it's just like build cool things, share them with people, and see what happens.
No, I was going to say that resonates for me and probably for Lior more than you know, too, because the way that Lior and I met actually was through working on a side project called the 2020 Fund for our class. And then, fast forward, now it's basically the basis of like my full time company as a founder. And a big part of why, Lior and I still are friends. Despite the
Otherwise,
ups and
no
downs.
reason to be friends.
No reason to be friends otherwise. So anyway, but to your point, the lines are really blurry, and I definitely resonate with that too. Especially business school or even in the tech world when I was in BC, I feel like friends versus coworkers versus potential future partners or whoever, everything's just so fluid. And same with projects and who you meet and what opportunities they open or things that you learn. So anyway, that really resonates. I think it's a really special part of kind of the industry that we're in for sure.
Yeah, it's like it's all it's also similar. And my guess is that when you were starting the 2020 project, it's like I'm not sure if you knew like what it would actually turn into. And
Yeah,
Definitely not.
definitely not.
yeah, it's I guess when I like for me at least, when I take that thought far enough, when I take that thought to its completion, I end up at like, if you're gonna do something, do it well, just because you never know like what it could actually turn into.
Hmm. Actually, related to that, I'm curious if you find that pursuing different side projects on the downside almost makes you less focused because I
Mm.
not only just in terms of my specific focus in that time, but I admit I listen to a lot of entrepreneurship podcasts and interviews, and I feel like I leave those interviews and I'm like, oh wow, like I heard about this crypto idea, and I'm like, I have no relation to crypto, but I suddenly get really excited about the prospect of like pursuing a crypto company, and I never actually do it, of course. Like I'm locked into what I'm doing, but I feel like I would be so tempted by like the shiny object syndrome if I were to kind of indulge all the little kind of side project inklings that I had. I'm curious how you balance that personally.
Yeah, well, for like the 30 or so side projects that I have listed on my site, I've probably started like 30,000, or okay, not exactly 30,000, but like
A
there's
lot.
definitely
Point taken,
yeah, I
though.
know. There's definitely like a survivorship bias where it's like those are only some, and like so many things have kind of like fallen victim to the shiny object, or the
Mhm.
new thing. And it's an interesting thought because Silicon Valley, like our industry as a whole, is based on making use of these new things that get created and using them in ways that are productive for people. Um, the way that I think about side projects is they very often have a purpose. And let's say I hear about a new technology or something that I find fascinating or interesting. For me, I get so excited about these things that it's not whether or not I should be excited about it. It's like I'm gonna be excited about it no matter what. The downside is actually taking something that I've already solved with work, or taking a problem that I'm currently facing with work and solving it with this new technology because I'm excited about this technology. So what's cool about side projects is you can actually be really you can kind of do them however you want, and like the goal is to just do something that's interesting to you. So that's kind of how I see it. It's like a nice way to compartmentalize trying new things, taking risks. Um, and it actually helps me focus a lot more just because I'll like start working on a side project. I'll take it as far as I want to take it. And if there are good things that I learn from that, I can apply them to my day-to-day work. I can apply them to other things. It's kind of like a sandbox for new ideas. It's a sandbox for learning new things. So I think it's important to do them just because in a field that evolves as quickly as ours does, I think it's the most hands-on way to stay current and kind of stay at the edge of what is going on.
Hmm.
Very cool.
Interesting.
Maybe to that end, to some extent, like you were in financial products, as far as I can tell, for most of your career, if not the whole one. And then you join Coinbase in 2018. So curious along the way. Was it a side project? Was it a post? Was what kind of crypto pilled you into wanting to join Coinbase and kind of getting into this world?
Totally. My The philosophy that kind of ultimately led me to Coinbase was the thought that if you're going to work for someone who you really who you find inspiring. Work for someone you'd like to emulate. So at that time, I someone who I thought was very inspiring was this guy Balaji Srinivasan. I don't know if I pronounced his name
Yeah.
correctly.
Balaji
Uh,
Srinivasan. Yep.
Balaji, yes, BSS. Yeah,
Yeah.
he's very
Yeah.
very well known.
Yeah.
Um, I was at a point where I knew that I wanted to focus on, like learning and just working with people who seem to be doing very, very interesting things. So I just pinged him on earn.com. It was, funnily enough, that was the
Yeah.
product that he was working on at the time.
Oh, cool.
And we got in touch, and I ended up joining Earn for a couple of months. Um, and then pretty early on, like after the time that I joined, Earn ended up getting acquired by Coinbase. So joined Earn to work for Balaji, and then Earn got acquired by Coinbase, and then I ended up at Coinbase working for Balaji for about a year while he was there.
I'm curious more about that. He's so
Yeah.
iconic. It's especially amongst people in tech. Like, what was that experience like? And I guess did it match your expectations of what you thought you'd learn? I'd love to hear more about it.
Definitely. It was one of the more intense phases of my career, just
I've
because,
heard that.
and yeah, but like in a really, really good way. Like looking back at it,
Yeah.
it was really intense. It was definitely like high stress, but it was so rewarding, and I think I probably condensed like 5 or 6 years of learning into 12 months. Yeah, and there were a lot of phases where things would like be slow for a little while, then suddenly they would be like, extremely, extremely fast. And it was very sudden, and I think I definitely appreciated it just because I wasn't sure if I could do it. And it was just nice to like always have these challenges that I would just like have to step up to and see if I could solve them. So I think that it was great, and being in that position within Coinbase as well was really interesting, just because uh, when you're reporting to the CTO of, at the time I think it was an 800 or 1,000 person company, it's kind of interesting having this mentality of like, let's get it done right now, in a place where there are resources and there are like many great people there. It's just so interesting because you can actually go really, really far.
Mm.
I think it's also interesting to see the different kinds of like influence and power that one can wield, in the sense that in an organization it's like there are different ways to kind of achieve outcomes and kind of like achieve the goals that you set out to do. And it was just interesting seeing seeing when to like wield what kind of power, when to influence people in certain ways versus others. But yeah, it was awesome. I'm really, really glad that I did it, and I think that it definitely did a lot to shape both what I'm doing right now, but also how I'm doing it.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, and yeah, it was awesome, and I'm really glad that I took the chance. And just like you mentioned with the, was it the 2020 fund?
Hmm.
Yeah, I going into working for Balaji at Earn, I had no idea that it would turn into what it turned into.
Hmm.
But yeah, it's funny how these things work out.
I'm curious about that experience. And I mean, it's a huge compliment to feel like you've learned 6 years of stuff condensed into a much shorter time period. I'm curious, was it like the culture or something about his leadership style or just how fast paced the industry was? I'm sure it was a mix of a lot of different things, but what lessons could be taken away for other people aspiring to kind of create that kind of team experience for people that they work with?
Totally. There's something that I say to the team a lot at Center here, which is the way to do the thing is to do the thing. And to kind of break that down, it's like sometimes Balaji would come to me with asks that were not really in my job description, not really anything that I'd done before, not anything that I knew how to do. And he would just say, just figure out how to do it. The way to do it is to do it. Like one example is one quarter he called me and he's like, Omar, I need you to recruit crypto engineers. And I was, I was an engineer myself, but I wasn't, necessarily a recruiter, nor had I recruited many engineers before. And in my head, I kind of thought to myself, oh, there's probably some secret that like you learn when you go to like recruiting school, and like you learn like the right combination of words or the right, buttons to press or the right way to write the cold email or whatever. And then you know how to be a recruiter, and then you can recruit people. And what I realized from working for Balaji is like, for most of these things, like that, that knowledge doesn't really exist. And the way that you do something that seems really big and daunting and something you've never done before, the way you do it is by doing it. and then you just get better at it over time. So it's like, how do you recruit 10 engineers? Well, you start by sending one outbound email, and then
Mm-hmm.
another one, and then another one, and you just keep doing that. And of course, you have to course correct and you have to evaluate. But the big thought here is there's nothing that you need to learn um, that you don't already know, or is something that you'll figure out as you're doing it. So no matter what, the answer is like, just take another step forward, and like just keep moving, just keep getting closer to your goal, keep course correcting, and then just have faith in the process, and eventually you'll get there. um, it's really easy to put things off and say, oh, I'm going to wait because today is Monday and I have a meeting with the head of recruiting on Friday. So maybe I'm going to ask them for their advice first. And then I'm going to send the email. No, send the email, like get started, start doing it. People will respect you more. People will give you better feedback. You'll have better questions. It's like, just start doing it. And then eventually you'll do it in just start doing it. And then you'll definitely get there. The way to definitely not figure something out is to not start doing it.
Yeah.
Underrated advice for sure.
Yeah, totally. Um, so, fast forward a couple years, you're an EIR at Paradigm. Just curious, what was, we've had a couple of EIRs on the pod, but just curious, what makes for a good EIR program, and what was the reason that you wanted to go that direction?
Yeah. I think being an EIR at Paradigm was yeah, it was like an extremely influential time. It's kind of like I was saying with how I ended up working at earn.com. It's like, when you're gonna join a company, go work with the best people you know. In my mind, I had spent a good amount of time at Coinbase, building engineering teams, shipping products, adding new assets and whatnot. I just wanted to get closer to what was happening, at the chain tip. I wanted to see what was happening on Ethereum, what were, like, the latest and greatest things that were going on. And within a few weeks of joining Paradigm, I felt like I had discovered so many things that I didn't even know existed before. So that was awesome. My goal was to just like compress a lot of exploration and learning into a short time frame, into a short time window. So yeah, my experience there was awesome. And when I first joined, I came with a list of ideas, and I thought the best way to spend my time would be to just go through these ideas one at a time and just ship things and bring them to market. What's cool about being an EIR, though, is you have a lot more access than you may have otherwise. And what I mean by that is, I actually started reaching out to some Paradigm portfolio companies, or I got introduced to them by folks at Paradigm. And I could just ask questions and say things like, what's the biggest problem that you're facing? What's keeping you up at night? What can I help with? And I think that if you just reach out to a company out of the blue and you say that, they'll think, oh, this person is trying to sell me something. But because you're embedded within a firm, you can do that, and you can just be a genuine resource, and you can actually understand what problems people really have. And it's awesome because they will share what their biggest problems are, and they'll share the things that are probably keeping them from growing. And yeah, that was something that was really special about being an EIR at Paradigm, which is just being able to do that. I did some of the projects that I kind of like joined thinking that I was going to do, but then I ended up writing the staking contract for Uniswap V3. Uniswap had just launched their V3 protocol, and there was nothing for liquidity mining. And as I was speaking to them, it came up that they wanted to write that contract, and it was just cool because it's like that was a very clear problem, and like they just needed a solution to exist. So the way to do the thing is to do the thing. I kind of just started doing it, then people kind of noticed, and yeah, it worked. And I think that I learned a bunch by doing that. So yeah, it was a really, really good experience. And then how I ended up starting Center from there was I I sort of set a time frame for myself. I think being an EIR is an awesome role. That said, it's not something that you want to do like as an entire career, just because it's a transition, right? It's like going from one thing to another. And as much as it is exciting, there's also something a little bit scary about it, which is this thought that how do I put it? there's always a little bit of striving involved because you are not really sustainable in your current state. You're doing something that you won't be able to do forever. You're doing something that is really ephemeral, and you have to like create something else, or you have to become somebody who you are not in the current moment. um there's a really good I forgot who wrote it. I can send you guys a link later on, but it was someone, and they wrote a blog post about a meditation retreat they did, and they said, striving is the root of all human suffering. And I didn't really realize, but it's just that feeling of like, I
Hmm.
have to come up with a new idea. I have to like have a great idea by so and so date. It's actually really stressful because you can't
Yeah.
really, rest and just enjoy the current moment, because you have to focus on becoming something else in a set time frame, in a set time window, with, certain objectives and whatnot.
Hmm.
Um,
Super interesting.
so yeah, so I just set a goal to come up with an idea within a certain time frame, and I think it was like T minus like 6 weeks. I was exploring non
Oh,
fungible
wow.
tokens and whatnot, and it's just like that happened to be the idea. So sometimes I wonder, maybe if I gave myself less time, whatever I was doing at that time, that would have ended up being it. I think that no matter what, I would have ended up building something in the with the same customer in mind, because with Center it's like I'm building the thing that I wish existed, and whether I was doing it for non-fungible tokens or for fungible tokens or for anything, I think the end audience would be people who build things for others.
Very cool. Maybe just to that end, describe a little bit about what Center is, and yeah, you kind of mentioned how you got it going, but yeah, what is Center?
Totally. Center is a suite of APIs and developer tools designed to help make the crypto utility phase happen faster. And to break that down, if you remember, like maybe when I was talking about the first website that I made when I was in ninth grade to impress that girl, there was this amazing website called GeoCities that you could use to build
Yeah,
websites. Yeah,
totally.
yeah, okay,
Of
cool.
course. I think I might
GeoCities was
have
the
tried to
coolest.
build like a Dragon Ball Z GeoCities website
There
or
you
something
Oh
go,
along
my
those
with
gosh.
like
lines.
iframes and blinks and stuff. And
Yeah, exactly.
I remember they had this one like text area where you could just like write HTML and then hit save, and then all of a sudden the page would like just show up.
Magic.
I didn't Yeah, I didn't realize it at the time, but like that was magic for me, because I'm just like, oh my god, like it's that easy. I can just like read this book, learn this HTML, and suddenly it just shows up. It's like, so there was something really magical about it, and I thought that it was very useful, and it helped me make a lot of websites. Now imagine for a second, imagine that text box didn't exist, and in order to make a personal website, all you had to do was crawl the entire internet, and then you could make your personal page. Only then you can make your Dragon Ball Z page. That's basically what it's like to build anything in crypto these days. If you want to build something as simple as a hello world, or really really simple thing, step one, go index every NFT in existence, or go do all of this work, or do all this infrastructure, or go spend months, or go raise millions of dollars to build all of these things so that you can do the thing. And at our core, that's what we're trying to solve for people. We want to make it so that anybody with a great idea can build a crypto app in a weekend instead of in a quarter. We want to make it so that people can focus on the things that make their ideas unique, and they can just assume that the infrastructure is there, that the text box is just there, and they can just start doing the thing, and all of these other problems that they would have to otherwise face are going to be solved and are going to be taken care of. So we started off just focused on NFT rendering. NFT rendering is to step back. An NFT is a non fungible token. It's basically a unique object that exists on chain. A lot of these NFTs are very visual in nature, so pieces of art or SVGs or animations or movies or videos, but actually showing that thing in a way that makes sense to a human being is actually really difficult. Like if you said, show me, CryptoPunk 1, 2, 3, 4, there are like 6 or 7 steps you'd have to do to actually get to the point that you could display the picture. And because people are always creating these new assets, and they're always, minting new things, there's almost like an infinite number of combinations and possibilities and just complexity that you have to figure out so that you can actually see the thing. So it's the kind of problem where it seems like it should be easy, but it's actually really hard. And we want to make it really easy. We want to kind of take all that complexity and make it so that if people want to deal with it, they can, but they can also just count on us to solve it for them. So that's how we got started with NFT rendering. And then we realized, oh, there are a lot of adjacent problems here. For people who want to build anything related to non-fungible tokens, there's a couple of these problems where it takes a lot of work or capital or time or effort or focus, and it's a distraction from the core thing that the application is trying to build. So our focus is just figure out what those things are, build them, make great APIs for people, and just repeat, do it over and over and over again, and just help people get their apps and their products to market faster.
And just curious to those ends, like maybe it'd be interesting to talk about a couple of examples where folks have used Center, or maybe even interesting ways that folks have used Center that kind of jump out to you as ways to kind of illuminate this even further.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, some of the core use cases so a lot of our customer base right now is very NFT focused. When you think about
Mm-hmm.
it, one common use case for a marketplace, for example, is a user goes to a page and then they connect their wallet, and then the marketplace wants to show all of the NFTs that somebody has in their wallet.
Mm-hmm.
Blockchains are really good at storing data in a way that makes sense to machines, but really bad at storing them in a way that makes sense for human beings. So actually, the act of just show me all the NFTs this address owns is actually incredibly hard. It actually requires the equivalent of going out and crawling the internet. So simple things like that, and then okay, show me the floor price for this collection, and then show me the media, and then show me similar things, and show me just simple things that should be table stakes are still quite difficult to do. um for us, the way that we have our views for where the space might go, but up until this point, we've been inundated with so many requests from our customers, things that they
Mm-hmm.
need in addition to things that we're already doing, that we've been able to kind of keep our product roadmap pretty full just by talking to our users and kind of understanding what
Mm-hmm.
they want. What what I think is interesting is we get to see what is happening on chain really, really well. Like I remember
Mm-hmm.
when I forgot what they were called, when like on chain SVGs kind of became a thing, when people loot, that's what it was called. Like when loot
Mm-hmm.
became a thing, it was so interesting because all of a sudden, like, rendering complex fonts based on SVGs from on chain media. I remember when that became a really big thing, and like for a while that was our biggest focus until we actually solved it. And it's interesting because we can always see what the early adopters are trying to do, and we have to make sure that we can support those use cases so that as soon as somebody has a cool idea, there's a way that they can very easily share it with the world. um, Another
Have you
thing
ever
that's
thought
really
about
interesting. Yeah, good.
have you ever thought about, I mean, I don't know what the necessarily the regulations against this are, but to your point, you have a view into projects in a way that most folks do not. And so in thinking about the ways to monetize against that, it's like there's kind of building products for all these projects and for these marketplaces. And then there's two, there's probably some like additional of financialization you could imagine, because you're going to have insights about these projects before anyone else does. And so I'm just thinking like in trying to, use the data and the kind of insights that you have to your advantage of crawling all of NFTs, have you ever thought about like creating products against that, in terms of like direct investment, or who knows what other things you could kind of come up with. But just curious, given that you have that view into all this data, that there might be something else you can do with it as well.
Definitely. Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. I think that for for me, I think that the ability to do that is a very good heuristic for the quality of our data. AKA,
Mm-hmm.
like, we want our data to be so good that we could do automated trading strategies or feature detection or something like that. but we also know that that's not really our core business, and that's not really our strength. Like I think something like
Sure.
that could be a very fun, side project blog post. But I
Yeah.
think getting to the point that our data, that we're that confident in our data, is in some ways like a lot of the goal. We want to make sure
Hmm.
that other people can do these things. We want to make sure that other people can also explore these strategies, um, by making this data available, by doing these things. And what's interesting is just indexing all non-fungible tokens is a lot of work, and it's actually difficult enough that we actually rewrote our core indexer like 5 or 6 times. And what's funny is that by the time we got around to the fifth revision of it, we became so good at indexing data from blockchains that we ended up releasing adjacent products that use these things that we've learned to index other things. So
Mm.
I think it was 2 weeks ago we launched a friend.tech API. Friend tech is an interesting
Oh,
protocol that just came out.
yeah.
Yeah,
Wow. Very cool.
yeah. So what's really cool is that the core technology, the core things that we use to build that are completely based on the systems and tools and processes we built in indexing NFTs. So there could be something interesting here. And then with the NFT market itself, like it can be pretty volatile, like any new market is. And it becomes an interesting challenge for us, which is there a way for us to generalize and kind of like enter adjacent markets with these things that we have built, and kind of like grow our scope and solve even more problems for people who are building things?
Interesting. We've interviewed a lot of people on the pod, not necessarily in NFTs or crypto, but who have experienced long enough building cycles where they've built in times where like the thing that they're building is really in vogue, especially amongst VCs or users or whoever, and then other times where it's not as in vogue. And I'm curious from your perspective, how has that impacted your building journey, if at all? Like I'm sure there, especially in times when there's a lot of excitement, some things are a lot easier, but there's also trade-offs also of like, building in times where you don't have a lot of like tourists, if people call them, I guess, like people who are dabbling in crypto and more of kind of like the native people who really believe in it. I'm curious how that's impacted kind of your journey.
Yeah, definitely. I remember we had something similar even at Coinbase, where from all of the things that we would do, one of the biggest drivers on our metrics was just the price of Bitcoin. Um, we definitely have that here, just because it, like blockchain and crypto is still a pretty cyclical market, and it definitely goes through phases where we think it's like the future and it's going to be like it, and then we go through phases where nobody mentions it for weeks or months at a time. Going back to what we were talking about what's in our control and what's out of our control, the way that I see it, I obviously can't like control what markets are going to do. I can barely keep up with what markets are going to do. What I can do
Fair
is just
enough.
like what I can do is I can like ask myself, are we helping builders bring more things to market sooner? Are we creating things in a capital efficient way? Are we running our company in a way where we will sustain regardless of what the market does over the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years? I think that the best crypto companies, or best companies in general, tend to get built during bear markets. Um, I think that when everything is going up and everything is, there's like a lot of excitement and whatnot, it becomes very easy to, or it's easier to like raise capital and build a team and whatnot. But I think it's specifically because it's like the fact that times are difficult are often what make companies good. It kind of teaches them the muscle memory of doing things in capital efficient ways, of saying, do we need 10 people to do this, or can we do this with 2 people? And it kind of forces people to innovate and do things in a way that is both better and is also more cost effective. Um, so that's kind of how I see it. Ultimately, markets are going to go up, markets are going to go down. We can't really control it, but that's okay, because regardless, we are still going to like ship new features for builders. We're still going to help people advance the crypto utility phase. And in a way, when these bull markets do happen, they very often start with one or two use cases that people just discover that suddenly become really popular. So we actually believe that if we do our jobs well enough, we can help bring on, the next cycle of the market. We can help create those new things that will be the like the killer apps, the killer use cases that people get very excited about.
I love that. And the other thing, oh, go ahead, Lear.
Oh no, just I guess on that dimension, like how much do you feel the pressure to build for kind of people talk about native folks versus building for the on ramp for the next kind of billion users? There's kind of like two schools of thought. It's either like let's really focus on the people who care more about this right now versus the on ramp. Like when you look at like friend .tech's website as an example, like I mean there's some elements that the ethos is very crypto focused, but it's not like in your face crypto. Whereas like, I don't know, you go to Uniswap and it'd be a little bit different. So just curious, like maybe between using those two as an example or maybe not, like how do you think about which is the right folks for both Center to build for and also for, the crypto community writ large?
Absolutely. I think that is it's a really important question to answer, and I think the sooner that a company can get around to answering that question, the more likely they are to succeed. And I think that you can get there sooner by not having to build your own indexer, not having to build your own, NFT CDN, et cetera, et
Fair
cetera.
enough.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, it's like I think that there should be, 100 times more crypto apps than there are today, and we want to help make that happen by solving all of these common problems that they'll all have to face. And I think that it's awesome that like there are apps that use blockchain that don't necessarily have blockchain anywhere on their landing page. Like I think we'll be like in the in the utility phase, so to speak, when there is something that uses this technology that doesn't mention that it uses this technology. The
Mhm.
technology kind of becomes invisible, like good design. Um, so which is the right one to go for? I think it's really about knowing who your audience is and kind of communicating things in a way that resonates and makes sense with them. For us, we tend to focus more on the builders. So if somebody is building one of these apps, whether their end user is crypto first or is not crypto first, um, we would like them to spend more time with their users, and we do that by just taking all of these common challenges and whatnot and just making them disappear and just making them all done.
Mhm.
I was going to ask, I know in our last conversation, we talked a lot about how part of your personal journey as a founder has been like almost like building the self confidence or like the your own personal conviction in yourself to become a founder. And especially when you were talking about being an EIR and talking to founders, I feel like part of my way of doing that for myself was being inside a VC firm and meeting a lot of founders and meeting they're all obviously intelligent great people, but seeing that like at the end of the day all founders are just humans who just have the kind of personal will or conviction to kind of go after something they believe in. I'm curious if if you could comment more on that for yourself, like what was that journey like, and what would you recommend for people who are kind of like on the cusp thinking about whether they should become a founder or not?
Yeah, definitely. um that's been a very yeah it's a very interesting point you mentioned. It's a very interesting journey, and I before I started Center, I used to look at being a founder as this like this founder with like a capital F. This is a job description. You must get invited to these like Telegram groups and like WhatsApp groups where it's like other famous founders spend time. But more and more, I've realized that a founder is actually it's like just an individual who decides to start something, decides to create something. So it's kind of like we were talking about earlier with the difference between side projects versus companies versus investments, or people being coworkers or friends or acquaintances, and it's like the lines kind of blur. I think the biggest thing that I've learned in kind of like being a founder is that you already have everything that you need to succeed as a founder. And I say this because when I started Center, I did not believe that, and I kind of assumed that there was this, manual that I would read or this thing that I would learn, and then suddenly I'd become, like a tie wearing CEO, and I would suddenly like know exactly what to say to motivate people, and I would never appear confused, and I would never like not know what I was doing. And I tried doing that for about 6 months, and it was so bad. And I just failed miserably at so many things that I thought should be really easy. And I kind of paused and I looked back at it, and it's this realization that the thing that caused me the most difficulties as a founder was the thought that I wasn't already enough. The thought that there was like this thing that I had to figure out, or this thing that I had to like get, or this, this insight or this realization that I had to have so that I could be a good founder.
Totally.
Striving and just, yeah, like wanting to be someone else, or thinking that I needed to be someone else, was by far the biggest lesson that I learned. And the lesson is that I am actually already everything that I need to be, and that like we're all already there. We just have to give ourselves permission to keep going.
I love that. And it reminds me of what we talked about earlier in your advice around just like doing stuff, like getting in the reps and how quantity almost leads to quality, like almost just doing it and knowing that you're going to be bad at it probably for the first couple times and then just kind of pushing through that. That all resonates a lot. There's a quote I can't remember.
Totally.
It's literally been stuck in the back of my head this entire time about how like there are more failed dreams that happen because of people's own self doubt, not like starting and failing. It's just like people just don't even get started. And so, anyway, I really love that message. And yeah, I hope other people kind of internalize that. It's, absolutely a choice. So, very cool.
Definitely, it's a choice. And then not only that, but this, I don't know, I keep learning this lesson over and over again. And when things start to work, and when things, when you become successful, you will still be yourself. And the things that make your company unique, the things that make your venture unique, will be the things that make you as an individual unique. um, for me, that was a really big realization. Like it's like incorporating your whole self. I don't know. It's like we all like one thing that that I used to think a lot about was my childhood. And I grew up middle child. I have two brothers. Um, my older brother's a doctor. My younger brother is a lawyer. And three boys in a Middle Eastern household were very competitive. So for me, I grew up with a bit of a chip on my shoulder, and I always wanted to just, compete and see if something is possible, and kind of like challenge authority and bend the rules and whatnot. And I thought to myself, oh, now that I'm starting Center, now that I'm building an organization, maybe I have to like let go of that. Maybe I have to ignore that. And I did that for a while, and everything just felt strange. And then I realized, no, actually, that, part of me that has like a chip on the shoulder, like needs to have a seat at the table. And like the culture that I will create will be a little bit rebellious. And like a small part of that will be because of that part of me. So even the things that you think are your weaknesses, or the things that you think hold you back, funnily enough, can often be um, uh, can often help you in the journey of whatever it is that you're doing. So it's this realization that like you don't need to change anything about yourself, and even if you wanted to, you probably can't change certain things about yourself. So it's better off to like figure out who you are, and figure out how to use those parts of you to your advantage, as opposed to trying to change them.
Totally.
Wow. Yeah.
Also, one of the main, oh, sorry. I was just
Oh
going to
no, I
say,
was
I
just
think
you go for it, Steph.
no, I was just going to say the one, I mean, despite all the ups and downs of being a founder, I feel like one of the biggest rewards is getting to work with people and or in a culture that you really like. And so the only way you can do that really is by being yourself, which is why I love that advice so much. I feel like too much time is spent like repressing these kind of things that make us really unique that are actually really powerful if you harness them the right way. So that resonates a lot.
Yeah,
Cool.
I was gonna say being a sibling, or having two other siblings rather, that one is a doctor, one is a lawyer, and also growing up in a Middle Eastern household. Definitely some of the things that you were observing resonate a lot. To those ends, though, for founders maybe who are coming to you, who are 2 years behind you in the journey, are there resources, or are there like Is it just kind of you just time will allow folks to kind of get to this space, or like what do you think were the things that allowed to you to kind of push yourself to go beyond maybe your preconceived notions into who you are as a founder today?
That's a really good question. I would say to trust your gut more. So for someone who is just getting started right now, one very common thing that I'll hear is, "Oh, but I don't know what to work on." But I think that there are so many things like, but then I'll double click on it and I'll ask the person more questions and like learn more about them. And that there actually are things that are really exciting to them, but they don't believe that there's a way to monetize them. They don't believe that they can turn
Mm,
it into a business. They can't. They don't believe that it's possible to build a great company doing this. I would say that like people should trust their gut more, and if they find something interesting and they believe that they will be a good entrepreneur, you know, go deeper, explore it more, do the things that you are genuinely interested in, and then believe that you'll explore it and believe that like you'll figure out how to turn it into a business. I think that that is much better than going the other way, which is to say, here are the top 3 things that I think could be big businesses and like let me see if I can get myself excited about them. I remember a long time ago I was thinking about what company to start or what to work on, and I remember going to the I think it was like the BLS website, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and I just
mhm.
downloaded a spreadsheet of like the biggest industries by like number of people or by like revenue or something like that, and I just sorted it and I was like, oh, okay, the biggest industry, I forgot what it was, like personal trainers, therefore I should build like a CRM for like it made sense logically, but it just felt, I don't know, like it's like that's like the purest, that's like the biggest form of striving. It's just like I think this is going to be big, therefore let me like change myself completely to like fit this thing that I think might actually be big. And like that'll work for 1 or 2 days and then you'll get, discouraged about something, and unless you really care about or are interested in the problem you're solving, it'll be hard to persevere. So that's why it's important to explore the thing that you think is interesting and figure out, what the business is, and kind of pathfind that way, as opposed to saying, everybody's doing, AI, or everybody's doing this or that, therefore I should do this as well. Believe that there is going to be a big market somewhere adjacent to something that you're interested in, and then just, keep typing. Um,
Love
it's
that.
it's Yeah, like the whole keep typing thing. It's I think it was a Paul Graham essay called How Not to Die, and he has this one section where he says companies that do well tend to update their investors often because they have so many exciting things going on, because they want to share their statistics, they want to share their numbers. And companies that don't do well tend to not update their investors because it like let's be real, it sucks to write an investor update when like the stats are down, or when you don't have that much good news to share. So maybe it's like by updating, maybe if you update your investors more often, or you update them on a fixed schedule, you're more likely to succeed. It's kind of tongue in cheek, but I think it's true. Another way that I like to think about it is like, if a company succeeds, they've probably shipped a lot of features. Um, if they've shipped a lot of features, they've probably had to type on their keyboards a lot. Conversely, or I don't know if it's converse or contrapositive, I always forget, but like if a company dies, it's probably because they haven't shipped any new features in a little while. And if they haven't shipped any features, one reason why is because they haven't, really typed on their keyboards at all. So maybe there's a correlation. Maybe you just have to keep typing, and like eventually you'll get the right features and you'll get the right updates. But like what you can control is like whether or not you type. So it's just don't stop typing and just have faith that you'll figure out the rest as you're doing it.
Awesome. Omar, I know we're 5 minutes over time. We usually have like a couple minutes for rapid fire questions. Do you have time to do that, or should we just adjourn
Yeah,
whenever it's
absolutely.
that? Leora, do you want to kick us off with some rapid fire?
Yeah, maybe before we do that, and we'll edit it out. Maybe we should just would love an update on like center today. I'll ask you the question in a second. Yeah. Okay. Cool. We'll do that question. And we'll do rapid fire.
Good call.
Thanks, Nick, for editing. So yeah, maybe Omar. Before we get into rapid fire, would love to hear kind of the status of where center is today. Where is it going? All that fun stuff.
Yeah, definitely. Where we are today is the way that I like to think of this is like how our metrics have evolved. In the early days, it's like how many lines of code have I written, how
Mm-hmm.
many features do we have. Now the way that we think of it is like what percent of the internet is not using our APIs for NFT related things. What percent of the
Mm-hmm.
internet is not using our embed widgets? What percent are not using the NFTs that we render? And how do we make that number as close to zero as possible? How do we make it so that everybody's using us? And we do that by solving new problems or just going deeper into existing markets. So um, I think that we're very fortunate and very lucky that like this is the thing that we can measure. Like what percent of the internet is not using us. Um, yeah, and the way that we're doing it is kind of how we've been doing it all along, which is meeting up every week, talking about our goals, our priorities, our roadmap, and just committing to doing things and just typing on the keyboard and getting it done. Um, there have definitely been ups and downs, but I've never been more excited. I've never been as excited as I am right now, just because we still have that builder energy, and we've managed to achieve pretty big outcomes while still having a culture and a place that's fun to work at. We've decided to stay relatively flat as an organization. We've decided to stay relatively small. We've decided to just always double down on our own productivity. So it's really great. It's like a lot of the things that people enjoy about working at a smaller company, but also we work with you know pretty big companies. We have a lot of these partnerships in place. We've done a lot of these things. So I kind of think of it as the best of both worlds. And
Mm-hmm.
for where it's heading, we're always on the lookout to see what people are trying to do or what builders are spending a lot of their time building and what pieces of infrastructure they're solving over and over again. And we like to figure out how we can automate those things and kind of uh, turn something that would previously take months and make it take like 5 minutes through an API. Um, you guys can edit this part out if you want. Something that I get really excited about though is
Mm-hmm.
if you think about it, like we whenever I think about product and engineering productivity, I my view is that whenever our team, whenever a new person joins our team, they should be able to make the metrics we care about increase at an increasing rate. So what I
Mm-hmm.
mean by that is in some companies, you have to grow the team just so that you can keep up with your current pace, your current pace.
Mm-hmm.
In other companies, whenever you grow, you can increase your revenue like linearly. For us,
Mm-hmm.
we want to be able to accelerate our revenue growth when another
Mm-hmm.
person joins the team. And it's actually really hard to keep that up because you have to always be, like rewriting and rebuilding and refactoring and optimizing. But it's so cool because we're at the point now
Mm-hmm.
where if we want to, we could very easily, grow the team and increase these metrics that really matter, or spend more on cloud and actually like solve problems a lot faster. And all of the things that kind of get in the way, we've sort of done away with. So as like a
Mm-hmm.
capital allocator, I think it's really exciting because we can make these capital allocation decisions, and we actually can get pretty good return by just investing more in certain things. Um, yeah, it's really really exciting, and it's just cool how far, like how deep down the rabbit hole really goes.
That's
Very
really
cool.
cool.
Awesome. So yeah, we'll have quick. Or Steph, do you want to handle the rapid fire? Up to you.
Sure. Yeah, I'll do
Go for
that.
it.
So these are meant to be fast, kind of first things that come to your mind, one sentence or less answered questions. So the first step is the founder you look up to most.
Frank Slootman, I think is his name. I'm impressed at how he will say what's on his mind without worrying what other people will think about it, and I really look up to that.
The book that most changed your life, or article,
The
or
Alchemist. Yeah, I think probably the Alchemist. I read it in ninth grade, and I'll drop a link. There's a great passage called Two Drops of Oil, and it talks. I think it was Josh Kushner from Thrive who posted something talking about like going through life versus noticing life, and just like balancing those two. But I'll post a link right now.
yeah, I'd love to see it. What job would you want to have if you could not be a founder?
Oof, that's a good question. Either a protocol developer for a crypto protocol or a database administrator at like a huge, health insurance company.
Those are not ones that I was expecting. I'm not going to lie
Love
to you. And not
it.
ones we've received before.
There you go.
Interesting. I love that. Um, any first entrepreneurial endeavor, whether it's like your first side project or company, it could have been when you were really, young, whatever comes to mind.
Yeah, when I must have been 6, and we were living in Lebanon. We there was this I don't know if I can say this in a sentence, but pretend these are a lot of commas. You know the machines where you put in like a quarter and you turn it and you get like a little like pod or whatever. There was one and it
Yeah.
had this really obviously like fake jewelry in it, and like extreme like, and it was like 25 cents, or in Lebanon it was like 250 pounds, which is like even less than that. What I would do is I would buy like a whole bunch of those, and then I would present them nicely. Then we'd go to family gatherings during Ramadan, and then I would just walk around and just sell them to family members at like a huge markup. And it's like I would take something that I'd buy for like 250 pounds and I would resell it for like $10 or $12. And I didn't realize it, but at the time they were doing it just, to kind of encourage me as an entrepreneur. But I thought I'd figured out the answer to business. I was like, business can't be that hard. Like I can take these things that I buy for a quarter and resell for 10. But yeah, I think that was probably one of my earliest ventures. And yeah, it was awesome.
Very cool. And our last one, what's a piece of conventional wisdom or something that in general people in tech feel strongly about that you strongly disagree with?
Oof. I know it's a lightning question, but I could go full like Martin Luther on these. But I think like you know that one saying, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go with a team. I think whoever said that has never been to the DMV, because like you can be really like, I don't know, you can be really, really big, but there's more to it than just that. I agree it's important to do things with a team, but I think that teamwork isn't like an end. It's kind of like a means towards something else.
Mm.
So I think that even though you are a group, I think it is important to always be asking, are we moving as quickly as we can? Are we being as efficient as we can? And are there things that we can be doing better? But also, like, crypto, like blockchain, like a lot of this exists because of like Satoshi, who wrote the Bitcoin white paper. I believe that was one person. So a lot of people underestimate how much they are capable of. And I think the default answer should be like, yes, I can do it, and then figure out if there's anything that makes it not possible to do, as opposed to the other way around.
Mm.
I love it. I feel like the theme of this episode is just like believe in yourself. I feel so positive after this episode. I want to just
Yeah,
go start another
it,
company.
And keep pushing too, I
it's
would say.
it's
Yeah.
like it's like believe in yourself. You know it all. If you have internet, you can figure out anything you don't know. And like the things that make you weird, that like you used to try to change about yourself, end up being the things that generate the best returns and end up making things interesting.
Yeah. I love it. Great way to end the episode. Omar, thanks so much for coming on. This has been so fun.
Thanks so much,
Absolutely.
Mark.
Thanks for having me. This was awesome.